Formula One is built on speed, but sometimes it's decided by a watch on your wrist. In 2025, Tag Heuer takes over as the official timekeeper, replacing Rolex after more than 10 years. But not every luxury brand wants to join Formula One. Some of the biggest names in watches refuse to touch the sport. This isn't about engines, it's about image. Why do some brands fight to be seen in F1 while others stay far away? From Patek Philippe to Hermès, this is the list of watchmakers that said no to Formula One. Today, Formula One and watches are tied together. Tag Heuer is stepping in as the new official timekeeper in 2025. Rolex, which held the spot since 2013, is stepping out. But it's not just about timing races. Watches are part of the look of Formula One. The moment drivers step out of their cars, cameras roll. And the first thing many do? Slip on their watch. It's not by accident. It's branding. Every podium shot, every interview, every slow-motion replay becomes free advertising. Every second on screen matters. Teams sign deals with watchmakers, and drivers become ambassadors. Lewis Hamilton has IWC on his wrist. Max Verstappen wears Tag Heuer. Charles Leclerc flashes his Richard Mille. Even the rookies get tied in, with partnerships shaping their image before they've even scored points. It's part of the show. The car gets you the win. The watch reminds the world who you are. But here's the twist. While brands like Tag Heuer, Richard Mille, and IWC rush to be seen in the paddock, many of the world's most famous luxury watchmakers want nothing to do with Formula One. Patek Philippe. Patek Philippe is the crown jewel of Swiss watchmaking. Family-owned, exclusive, built on the idea that you never really own a Patek. You just hold it for the next generation. So why won't they touch Formula One? For Patek, F1 is too loud, too fast, too flashy. Their brand is about tradition, patience, legacy. A Patek owner doesn't chase a stopwatch. He hosts dinners in Geneva, collects art, and hands down watches as heirlooms. Their ads don't show celebrities or athletes. They show fathers and sons, generations passing time down like treasure. That's a very different world from the grid, where everything is about the next tenth of a second. Yes, Formula One drivers like to show off Patek watches in private. Lewis Hamilton has been seen wearing one off the track, but Patek itself refuses to put its name on a car or a paddock wall. Even when offered global exposure, they decline. Because for them, attention isn't currency, discretion is. Why? Because Formula One is chaos. Crashes, penalties, rule changes, sponsorship drama. Patek Philippe doesn't want its image mixed with that. They want to be timeless, not part of the weekend circus. For them, racing is temporary. Patek is forever. And in their world, that's the ultimate victory lap. A Lang & Söhne. If Patek is about timeless heritage, Lang is about German precision. Born in Glashütte, rebuilt after the fall of the Berlin Wall, A. Lang & Söhne makes watches that look like works of engineering art. So why not Formula One? Because Lang plays a different game. They don't chase the spotlight. They don't even sell worldwide at Rolex levels. Their whole appeal is being rare, an insider's secret. For collectors, owning a Lang is proof you've gone beyond the obvious names, that you understand craft on a deeper level. Formula One, with its screaming engines and global circus, is the opposite of that. Too public, too noisy, too commercial. Lange wants to whisper class, not shout speed. Their dials are quiet. Their movements are designed to be admired under a loupe, not through a TV broadcast. Even when Mercedes-AMG, a fellow German powerhouse, ruled F1, Lang stayed away. No Patek branding, no timing deals, nothing. To them, F1 sponsorship would cheapen the brand, because if you have to advertise in neon lights, you're no longer exclusive. And Lang lives on exclusivity. Every watch is hand-finished in Glashütte, every model produced in small numbers. A Lang owner isn't chasing visibility, he's chasing perfection. In short, Formula One is mass spectacle. A Lang & Söhne is private prestige. That's why their paths never cross. Jaeger-LeCoultre. If Formula One is about pushing limits, Jaeger-LeCoultre is about patience. Their nickname? The Watchmaker's Watchmaker. Why? Because even Rolex and Patek have used JLC movements inside their own watches. That's how respected they are. So why won't they join Formula One? Because JLC plays the long game. Their world is mountain workshops, quiet Swiss valleys, and slow craftsmanship. They don't scream for attention. They're the opposite of neon-lit sponsor boards. JLC's icons, like the Reverso, originally designed for polo players, are tied to elegance and culture, not the roar of engines. Even the way they market themselves leans toward film festivals, photography, and fine art. They want their brand to feel timeless, not tethered to weekly race results. Even when other Richemont brands like Cartier or IWC flirted with F1 drivers and ambassadors, JLC stayed out. They prefer partnerships that feel timeless, like polo, art, and film festivals, things that match their calm, elegant image. Formula One, with its noise, its drama, and its constant branding battles, doesn't fit that picture. For JLC, being seen next to tire smoke and political chaos would feel off-brand. So while drivers slip on watches as soon as they step out of the car, don't expect to see a Reverso on the podium. Jaeger-LeCoultre has built its prestige on being everywhere in watchmaking, but nowhere near Formula One. Cartier. Cartier is called the jeweler of kings. Their watches are less about racing and more about red carpets, palaces, and Paris runways. The Tank, the Santos, the Panther, these aren't built for lap times. They're built for elegance. So why no Formula One? Because Cartier sells a lifestyle that's slow, chic, and eternal. F1 is fast, loud, and sometimes messy. Imagine putting a diamond tiara on in the middle of a pit stop. It doesn't fit. Cartier's history is steeped in royalty, Hollywood icons, and fashion houses. Think Princess Diana with a tank on her wrist, or Andy Warhol wearing his Cartier just for style, never even bothering to wind it. Those stories build myth, and they don't need a racetrack to do it. When F1 drivers slip on their watches after climbing out of the cockpit, they want pieces that scream power, precision, and adrenaline. Cartier screams royalty, romance, and champagne at midnight. Totally different vibe. That's why, even though drivers may privately own Cartier pieces, the Maison itself doesn't chase Patek partnerships. Cartier has stuck to fashion icons, Hollywood stars, and royalty. It doesn't need an F1 podium to prove its worth. For them, staying out of Formula One is the ultimate flex. We don't need the speed. We already own the spotlight. Chopard. Chopard is no stranger to motorsport. Their Mille Miglia line has been tied to classic racing since the 1980s, with drivers like Jackie Ickx often spotted wearing one. But when it comes to Formula One, Chopard always stayed in the paddock's shadows. The brand has the heritage. They have racing credibility. But instead of chasing the F1 circus, Chopard planted its flag in endurance racing, becoming the official timekeeper of the 24 Hours of Le Mans, and later linking heavily with Porsche Motorsport. For them, F1 wasn't the right fit. Why? Because Chopard thrives on romance and tradition, while F1 is fast, political, and ruthlessly commercial. Endurance racing gave them history, stories, and a stage that matched their gentleman racer image. With Le Mans, you get tales of grit, drivers pushing through exhaustion, and machines tested beyond limits. A narrative far more aligned with Chopard's values. So while drivers in F1 parade tags and Rolexes on the podium, Chopard sits content in its lane. They didn't need the glitz of the grid. They built their racing legacy on the long roads of Le Mans, not the short bursts of Formula One. For them, motorsport is about heritage, not hype. And in that lane, Chopard already won. Vacheron Constantin. Vacheron Constantin is one of the oldest watchmakers in the world, crafting timepieces since the 1700s. They've built their brand on heritage, refinement, and exclusivity, often describing their watches as art you wear. So why not Formula One? Because the fit was never natural. F1 is loud, aggressive, and commercial. Vacheron sells itself as timeless, subtle, and above the fray. Associating with F1 would pull them into a spotlight they never needed. Instead, Vacheron leans into art fairs, haute horlogerie events, and cultural partnerships. They want their audience to whisper about craftsmanship, not hear an engine roar. While Rolex and Tag embrace F1's show, Vacheron keeps its mystique by staying out. Their clients don't look for logos on sponsor boards. They look for hand-finished dials, Geneva seals, and heritage that stretches back centuries. The irony? Drivers and team bosses still wear Vacheron privately. It shows up on wrists in the paddock, but never under official banners. The brand decided long ago, leave the racing spectacle to others. They'll keep selling the dream of eternity, not speed. And for a company that predates Formula One by more than 200 years, that choice speaks volumes. Breguet. Breguet is the watchmaker of kings and queens. Napoleon wore them. Churchill wore them. Their whole identity is tied to history, elegance, and technical invention. They literally invented the tourbillon. So why not Formula One? Because Breguet doesn't sell speed, they sell legacy. Partnering with F1 would drag them into a space of sponsorship logos and loud branding, the exact opposite of their carefully curated image. Instead, Breguet builds its aura around heritage exhibitions, museums, and discreet luxury. You don't see them chasing flashy athletes. You see them linking to culture, astronomy, and even aviation history. Their watches are tied to breakthroughs in navigation, scientific discovery, and royal patronage. Themes that feel eternal, not seasonal. It's not that F1 is beneath them, it's that it doesn't align. Breguet positions itself as timeless art, not sport. And while Tag or Rolex thrive on racing's adrenaline, Breguet's power is in restraint. Their clientele don't need to see their brand on a racetrack. They know its place in history already. Ironically, some drivers do wear Breguet off-track, proof the brand appeals to champions. But you won't see a Breguet logo on a garage wall anytime soon. For them, the podium they aim for is history itself. Hermès. Hermès is famous for leather, craftsmanship, and quiet luxury. Their watches are a natural extension of that. Elegant, stylish, but always understated. And Formula One? It's chaos, engines, corporate sponsors plastered everywhere. Not exactly Hermès's vibe. Hermès wants exclusivity, waiting lists, boutiques, and a whisper of luxury. They don't want their name shouted in a pit lane. When other brands chase visibility, Hermès prefers invisibility. They sponsor equestrian events, art shows, and fashion. It's luxury on their own terms. Their history comes from saddlery and the equestrian world, which means their DNA is about control, elegance, and tradition. The exact opposite of the high-octane unpredictability of Formula One. For drivers? Sure, you'll spot an Hermès strap in the paddock, especially paired with other high-end watches. But Hermès as an F1 partner? Never. It would risk diluting their beyond-the-crowd identity. Hermès thrives on scarcity, on being whispered about in hushed tones at auction houses, not splashed across pit walls on a Sunday afternoon broadcast. That's why Hermès sits out while Rolex, Tag, and Richard Mille fight for space. For them, not being in Formula One is part of the statement. Sometimes absence is the strongest form of presence. So there you have it. 8 of the world's biggest luxury watch brands that still refuse Formula One. Some of them, like Patek, Lang, or Breguet, say the sport is too noisy, too flashy, not worthy of their heritage. Others, like Cartier or Hermès, simply don't need it. Their power comes from being outside the crowd, not inside the circus. And then you've got the ones like Jaeger-LeCoultre or Chopard, brands that flirt with racing, but only on their own terms. They'll sponsor a classic rally or back a driver off track. But Formula One itself? Too messy, too corporate, too political. Meanwhile, F1 is still covered in Tag Heuer and Richard Mille logos. Rolex just stepped away after a decade, and Tag is now timing the sport itself. So the grid isn't empty, it's just missing the biggest names in watchmaking. And that gap almost makes the sport more intriguing. The absence of these Maisons creates a mystique, a what-if that lingers over the Patek. And that's the irony. Formula One and Swiss watches are perfectly aligned: speed, precision, performance under pressure. But for some Maisons, saying no keeps their legend alive. So now I've got to ask you, which brand do you wish we'd see on the Patek wall? Would you want to see a Patek on Verstappen's wrist, a Hermès clock over the pit lane? Or do you think F1 doesn't need them at all? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget, subscribe, because next time we're looking at the watch brands that tried and failed in Formula One. Because just like the sport itself, the story of watches in F1 is never just about time. It's about power, pride, and who dares to say no.